In this video, I'm going to give you my 5 tips on how to stand out as a software engineer. These are tips that will help at any career level, not just when you're starting out. Hi, and welcome to Mike Likes Robots, where we share knowledge to accelerate robotics. I'm Michael. I'm a senior software development engineer at Amazon, where I've been working for the past 4 years. And here are my 5 tips on how to stand out. My first tip is knowing when to ask questions. Now that might sound like you're asking too many questions, but most likely you're not asking enough. The truth is that when you start a new team or you start a new project, chances are that team is expecting you to ask a lot of questions. And this is especially true when you're just starting out. So my advice for you is this. Are you trying to find out something that another team member will know and you can't look up online? If so, there's no point wasting time. Go straight away and ask someone what you need to know. If, however, you're trying to do something and it is something you could find out online, then you could set yourself a time limit, say 15 minutes or half an hour, and try and complete it by yourself before you ask someone for help. This will give you a good balance between feeling like you're pestering people and taking all their time up and being able to actually complete your work. The last thing that your new team members want for you is to sit there wasting hours or even days on something that they could have helped you with in 2 minutes. For example, if you want to find some documentation for your project, that's something I would ask about straight away. You're not going to find it online. If you've changed some code and now it's not compiling anymore and you're struggling to figure out why, you could find that out online. Set yourself 15 minutes, see if you can figure it out, and if you can't, ask someone for help. My second tip for you is to take responsibility. And there's 2 ways to take responsibility that I'm talking about here. The first is taking responsibility for tasks that you don't normally do as part of your work. And the second way is to take responsibility when you make a mistake. So, when to volunteer for a task that's not normally something you work on. A lot of the time, your manager or your team will have a task that needs to get completed. And what they'd really prefer is to have one person to be the owner of it, to take responsibility for it and drive it forwards to completion. If that's something that you could possibly do, but is outside of your normal work area, it's a great idea to think hard about whether you could take that on. It's a way that you can stand out as an engineer, and it's a way that you can learn to do something new and to grow in your career. My most recent example of doing something outside of my normal work area is running a hackathon. I had a teammate who wanted to participate in a hackathon, but when I suggested they try to organize one, they weren't willing to take on the responsibility. So instead, I took on the responsibility. I arranged it, picked the theme for it, and made sure it went ahead. Now I'm much more prepared to run other hackathons in the future. The second way that you should take responsibility is when you've made a mistake. Especially when you're starting out, but all throughout your career, you can and will make mistakes. The best thing that you can do is just to learn from them and try to make sure they don't happen again. The best response if you get called out in a meeting for something that you've done wrong is to not get upset and to simply say, yes, I made a mistake there, and here's what I'm going to do to stop it happening again. That could be something that you do differently, or it could be a process that you or your team put in place to make sure that no one will make that mistake again. My most recent example of this was taking part in an informational meeting. I had a lot of distractions going on in the house, and I couldn't pay full attention. I couldn't ask questions at the end, and I didn't even realize how distracted I was until both my manager and one of my colleagues commented on it. And I realized how disrespectful it was to the presenter at the time. To this day, I make sure that there are as few distractions in the house as possible when I'm attending a meeting, out of respect for other people's time. My third tip for you is to actively pursue advancement. By that I mean you need to go after what you want for your next career step. In my experience, many people are content to receive the task from their team, to do their work and do it well and on time, but that's not the way that you can grow in your career the fastest. The best thing that you can do is to have an honest conversation with your manager about where you want to be. Is there more responsibility that you want to take on? Do you want a raise or a promotion? These are things that you need to bring attention to if you want to make them happen, and you need to make them happen yourself. To understand this better, try and think of it from your manager's point of view or from their manager's point of view. They have teams to manage, projects to get out on time, customers that they need to talk to and keep happy. How much of their attention do you think is solely on you? The answer is probably not that much. And that's why you need to bring their attention onto you. You need to make it happen, and that's what this conversation would do. So talk to your manager, tell them what you need, and ask them for feedback so that you understand exactly where you are and what weaknesses you need to work on in order to progress. My most recent example of this was when I was working on a team and I felt like I was taking on more responsibility than my level required, even acting in a team lead role. I had a conversation with my manager and I asked him for a raise, and not only did he respond positively to this, he actually helped me to get promoted instead. So I became the official team lead. It was a benefit to me and a benefit to him because it showed how he was growing his team. My fourth tip is to document your wins. And by that, I mean writing down what you're doing as you're doing it and noting down any wins that you have in that process. You can start this by taking notes every day of what you're doing. Open a note with the date, what are my responsibilities for today, and then write down what you do. This is a great way to keep a log and look back on how you fixed something in the past, but it will also help you with the next step, and that's periodically updating a document that contains all your wins. My recommendation for this is something called a brag doc, and I'll link it in the description, although mine is slightly different. What you do in this document is to set time aside, say every couple of weeks or a month, and update the document with what you've been doing and what has gone well. Use your daily notes that you've taken to help supplement this, and by doing it bit by bit, it's a lot easier to keep track of what you've done over a long period of time. You'll also have a great body of evidence if you need to pursue advancement. Show evidence that you have been working above your level. The next step after this is to use that brag doc to keep your resume or your CV or your LinkedIn profile up to date. That's another point where it's a really good idea to do it a little bit over time so it's always up to date, instead of making one big effort when you need it. For example, I have a spreadsheet that keeps track of everyone that's reached out to me from the company, saying something about the resources that I put online. This is a great way for me to figure out what the best resources are and what's been most helpful. And then if I need to prove that what I've done has been helpful, I have all the evidence right there. Bonus points if you can write some sort of data down. Numbers are even more convincing than quotes when you're trying to prove something. So remember to set time aside for writing your daily notes, your brag doc, and your LinkedIn profile. Don't dismiss this. Keeping my LinkedIn profile up to date was what landed me my job at Amazon in the first place. My fifth and final tip is to know your worth. Getting into software engineering is no easy feat. It takes a lot of training and technical knowledge. So getting where you are is already a battle. Not to mention any experience that you can get on top of that. You've earned the right to be confident. You should be confident in your statements and your decisions while being prepared to learn from your mistakes. Even if you don't feel confident from your amount of experience, I advise you to act like you're confident. Enough time acting like you're confident and you will eventually feel that confidence. My most recent example of this was taking part in a meeting with leaders several levels above me. I was nervous and didn't want to speak in case I didn't sound like I knew what I was talking about. I spent a lot of the meeting sitting and taking notes and distilling what I had heard down, up until the point where I made some realizations. And when I eventually spoke up about them, the leaders listened to me and the conversation took a whole different direction. Another part of knowing your worth is being aware of what other options you have. Keep an eye on your career field and see what other job opportunities there are, and see what kind of salary your job normally makes. It's a great idea to know what's out there. Either you'll find something that you think is more exciting and is a better opportunity, or you can be satisfied that where you are is the best place for you. So there you have my top 5 tips on how to stand out as a software engineer. Some things you can do periodically, like updating your brag doc or your LinkedIn profile. That's something that you can do straight away. Open up a daily note, put the title on, and start taking notes. Also start your brag doc up, ready to make your first entries. Other things you can do by talking to your manager, like having an honest conversation about where you want to be. and what kind of feedback your manager can provide you. So that's something you can do right now, is arrange a meeting with your manager to have that conversation. Go in knowing what you want and write down what the result of the meeting is so that you can look back on it going forwards. The last thing is interacting with your team. Try and act with confidence. Take responsibility for something that's outside of your comfort zone, and take responsibility for your mistakes. If you would like a good example of something to take responsibility for, you could offer to become the Scrum Master for your team, or to write something up that needs writing up. Lead a meeting with your team that no one's volunteered for. There's a number of options here, and any of them will help you to stand out and to grow in your career. Good luck standing out as an engineer, and I'll see you in the next video.